Well, good evening. In the various schools of Buddhism, one of them is called the voice hearers. So the voice hearer is someone who studies Buddha's sutras, listens to Buddha's teachings through the words, and hopes to alleviate their suffering in this life and gain enough merit to have a better life in the next life. So by pursuing the teachings, by listening to them and reading them, etc., that's the idea. So in Zen, the reason that Bodhidharma says not to rely on words and scriptures, but to recognize directly your original nature, your Buddha nature, is that that's a little bit of a different approach, you see. It's not that words aren't useful. It's not that you can't find inspiration. But here's the thing about inspiration and insight. It comes from a totally different place, being defined by Buddhist scripture. You see, when you're being defined by what your practice is, you're being bound by that. It's a limitation. When you have an inspiration, if you really examine it, even if it comes through as words, seems like it's coming from someplace else. It doesn't seem like it's coming from your ordinary idea of yourself. Mostly your idea of self is baggage. This inspiration, it's like, they often in Zen, they refer to when Buddha held up the flower. And only one monk got it and smiled. There's also something called mind-to-mind transmission, which is beyond words, you see. It's not that words aren't there, so it's transcending self. It's going beyond the idea of self, so that this inspiration seems like it's coming from somewhere else. So when you have a remarkably clear moment where something comes through to you and you go, and I call it sometimes an aha moment. Aha, you get this realization, something that's been troubling you or something that you've been thinking about comes through sometimes in a very poetic and beautiful way, that just shows you something. All of a sudden, it's just what you need to push you through your limited view of self, to open up to the transcendental. Zen is about direct experience. That's so different than the voice hearer, you see? It's not that a voice hearer can't have the same experience. Of course they can. We all have Buddha nature. They can get through, they can break through. If their karma is such that they break through, great. We can sit here and practice, quote, what we call Zen for 40 years and never break through. So it's not that one is better than the other. It's not that. You can have your own personal realization about something that takes you beyond your idea of how things are. And, there are beings who wake up, who are awakened, who never knew anything about Buddhism. It's not about that, you see. We call it Buddha nature, but that's just a label. Because we're working within this framework of trying to understand it this way. But you got to drop it, because to really have insight really does mean that your mind is empty, clear like space. so something can come through. Life is so much more wonderful than we can comprehend with our intellect and our knowledge of life so far. We have to break through. We have to kind of drop it. And so that we can experience things as they actually are. That's why on Sunday we talked about what defines you binds you. To me, poetry points at direct experience of something rather than describing something for you to think about. You see, it's not an intellectual exercise. It's grabbing you sometimes by the throat and taking you somewhere that could be really beautiful, really sad, really wonderful, whatever. But it's taking you beyond words. So we just had in the Theravada tradition, we just had a Buddha's birthday celebration thing happen. A lot of Mahayana traditions have picked up on it too, and they do it also. Some of the Zen traditions in Korea, they do the same thing. And I think probably some Tibetan traditions too. And supposedly the idea is that Buddha was born, died, and reached enlightenment all on the same day. At different periods in his life. So the interesting thing about that idea for me is every day is Buddha's birthday. Every moment is Buddha's enlightenment. Every day is life and death. One ends, one begins, every moment. So it's wonderful to, it's fine with me to have these celebrations. People get together, we eat good food, whatever. That's wonderful. And I think it's a great excuse for being together and celebrating a wonderful being. Why not? But I like to think about it as all the time. It never ends. Buddha's always there. Enlightenment is always there. It's not just once a year or on a full moon. Those are all wonderful experiences, sure. But they all point at direct experience. It's not the experience. It's just pointing at it. The real experience is recognizing your own Buddha nature in the moment. That's what we're after. So, it's tricky, isn't it? Because we do all these things externally in order to celebrate our lives, and it's all fine. But sometimes we define ourselves by that. And then we become kind of stuck there. It's almost like putting blinders on momentarily, as long as we're just seeing things through that particular view. I think it's more of a celebration if you do it from a non-attachment point of view. Then you're really celebrating life. Otherwise, it's part of duality. It's part of, the coming and going. It's not suchness. You with me?
I think there's a lot of ways to look at it, because what you're describing with words and rituals also create a tribal sense of identity where people feel better because they belong.
Right.
So he's a Buddhist or Zen or this or that, and you have this common language and these common rituals and these common ways of doing things, of reciting the 4 vows, it creates a sense of identity and belonging in a group that makes people feel safe, and there is a duality in that.
Mhm.
And yet we're all participating in it and
Yes,
feeling like it feels good.
yes. And I'm suggesting we reach beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not that we don't do it, but we don't attach to it, because that duality is also what causes war.
For sure.
That identification with the group. That's
Mhm.
not my group. That's my group. Wrong. And you know, especially today in our world, I mean, I feel like that's what I'm up against in terms of, you know, if I was to try to awaken beings to the reality, that would be it. You know, don't identify with this group. Play, sure, play all you want, but recognize it as play. It's just a movie.
Mhm.
It's a drama you're playing in. That's not who you are, which I think allows you to see other people's play and drama also, and not just see only yours as joining in the same idea. You know, they're just playing. Don't take them so seriously, you know, as though they're a threat, because they're different. You know, so yeah, it's a good point. It's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a parent, I tried to raise my daughter in a way that she would be open to all different perspectives
Yeah.
and, just to have a broad view. But now she tells me she wishes she had more of a quote sense of identity, that she envies kids who grew up within one religious group and they know who they are and they know what to
Oh,
expect and they know what their place is. And she's had this feeling of loss because of that.
Hmm.
And so I've been thinking a lot about it and just, sort of questioning. I know what my intention was from the beginning.
Mhm.
But we do live in, especially like what you're talking about now, in our society, it is so well defined of you're this or you're this. And she doesn't, she was floundering around. I'm not this, I'm not that. What am I?
Sometimes it's better to flounder. I think that's a really good sign.
I was going to say
That's
this.
an incredible question. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
so
If we all ask ourselves that every day, maybe this, things would work out a little bit better.
It's a good question to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it can lead to awakening, actually. Because it's a kind of open-ended question. It's not pretending you know.
Mhm.
Well, again, what defines? Yeah.
So, are we done? I guess we are. Thank you.
Thank you.